Dear friends, thank you very much for joining us in a special edition of Talking Europe. Ahead of the European elections, we will be focusing our conversations with members of the European Parliament, discussing the achievements of the last few years, but also what's coming up after the European elections. Today we have with us Alin Mituta, member of the European Parliament from Romania and from the new party. So Alin, thank you very much for joining us today. We are in the final stretch before the European elections. We're nearly the conclusion of the term of the European Parliament. It has been an interesting few years, a lot of challenges, but also a lot of achievements. What would you take away from this term of the European Parliament?
I think it was, there was like 5 years, a very active 5 years of this European Parliament. I think it will be remembered as maybe the most active mandate of the Parliament, because we passed through a pandemic, a war. We had also the conference on the future of Europe. We adopted a lot of legislation in the digital sector, in the Green Deal, policy and area. So it was a very active Parliament. I think we advanced in couple of fields, and I think now the legacy of this Parliament it's clear, and I think the next 5 years it will be more about implementation, because it's true that we adopted a lot of legislation, but the legislation is not implemented yet. So I think the next years will be more about implementation, and I think the role of the Parliament will be also important to look at how the member states and the Commission will implement all this mountain of legislation that we adopted.
Indeed, and you mentioned the future, and the next few months are predicted to be somewhat different. The polling indicates that there will be a rise in the far right. There will be more MEPs that are not necessarily supportive of European values and European ideals. Do you think there will be a change in the way the European Parliament operates in the next term? Do you expect also the positions on various policy areas, those especially that were achievements for the last European Parliament, the adoption of the Green Agenda, the Green Deal, of course, but also moving towards closer cooperation on health issues, defense and security, institutional reform? Do you think all these things might be undone in the next European Parliament?
Well, first of all, let's see what will be the result of the election. So I hope that the new Parliament will still have a majority formed by the pro-European parties, and most likely this will be the case. But it's true that we will have more MEPs from these right-wing extremist parties, but also left-wing extremist parties, and this will be a challenge for the Parliament. That's for sure. I don't know if the policies that we adopted during this term will be backtracked, let's say. I think, as I said, it's difficult to change what we adopted. It will be more about implementation, so that from this point of view, it's something assuring that the fact that the ball will be more with the Commission, I think, in the next 5 years, less with the Parliament in terms of legislation. But still, I think it's important to keep also in the Parliament this pro-European stance and pro-European feeling, because we will have two major let's say, issues on the agenda. We will have the institutional reform, and I think it's needed, and the enlargement. So this will be the two most important elements of the new 5 years, the new mandate. And of course, the role of the Parliament will still be important. I think it's important to have this majority which will push for both, so enlargement and institutional reform.
Mm-hmm. And as we are now in campaign mode, and yes, we anticipate the changes that we just discussed, what do you think are the main issues that voters are concerned with? And why perhaps, and this is the trillion euro question, why would they feel that those issues can be better served by more extreme parties?
Well, if you look at the current situation, as I said, we went through a lot of crises in the past years. The pandemic, for example, in many European countries, led to a success of these right-wing parties, which used a lot of fake news about Europe. You know, Europe, it's obliging you to to do the vaccine. Europe is obliging you, I don't know, to eat bugs and insects, things like that. So it created, this crisis created the need for someone to save, you know, citizens from so-called danger of the European Union. And this is why these extremist parties gain in attraction from the European citizens. This was coupled also with the fact that many European citizens don't know actually what is happening here in Brussels, don't know about the European politics and policies. This is the fault, I would say, also of the European Union. And I consider the European politicians also part of the fact that, you know, the European citizens they are not informed well enough about what we are doing. So I think we should invest more in as a union and as European politicians on informing better the citizens about, you know, the benefits of the European Union and what we are actually doing here. Because, as I said, there is a lot of mistrust coming from fake news, and this, of course, participate to the growing of these anti-European parties.
Yeah. And I think conversations like this, and we're grateful to have you with us, contributes in that effort. You know, it's important to put forward the counter narrative, to give people the information that will help them make a more informed decision about who should be in power and who should not. And speaking of which, we've seen recently instances in various member states where fundamental European values, like the rule of law, for example, but also media freedom, independence of the judiciary, are under attack. In some cases, totally undermined. Yeah. This is a major challenge for the EU. Things are done, the Commission is taking action, member states are trying to assert peer pressure. European Parliament and specific MEPs have been very vocal and active in that field. What else do we need to do to safeguard those fundamental pillars that a democracy depends on?
There are a couple of things. I think, first of all, I think we need to do better in terms of implementation, because for example, we have this rule of law mechanism. We have also the conditionality mechanism. But what we saw recently even is that the Commission disbursed still the 10 billion euros for Hungary, even though, you know, there are still problems there, and we could easily see that. That's why we in the European Parliament went with this case to the European Court of Justice, because we don't consider that Hungary protects well enough the rule of law, and for that reason it should not have access to European money. So that's one thing. I think we should be more careful in implementing the legislation that we have. Secondly, we also have the Article 7, you know, the possibility to suspend even some member states which don't protect the rule of law. But there we have the problem of the unanimity, because in order to, you know, to start the whole procedure, you need unanimity in the Council. What we propose in the Parliament is to, in the changes that we propose for the treaty change, is that we should pass from unanimity to QMV, to qualified majority, even for Article 7, because otherwise you will be in the same situation as we are today, with the Article 7 started, but you know, it doesn't make, it's blocked in the Council, because in the Council you need unanimity, and this will never happen in the current situation. So I think there are some things to do in terms of implementation of the current legislation, but also in terms of changing the treaties in order to have better rules for this.
And of course, we need also more vocal and active civil society and citizens alongside politicians to make sure that we resist efforts to undermine our democracy. And I think in this area also you have worked quite a lot. You have focused a lot on the question of citizenship and how to create a European sense of citizenship. Perhaps you can tell us a bit more about some of your proposals in that field, and how do you think that can contribute towards strengthening the EU and defending our values?
It's true that European citizens are not well informed about what we are doing here at European level. They are not involved enough in the politics and policies of the European Union. So what we proposed in the report that you mentioned is that we should create a sort of agora, we call it agora, European agora, in which randomly selected citizens from all of Europe will gather every year and will contribute to the Commission work program. This is the list of political priorities that the Commission and the European Union implements every year. And this will be also fed into the State of the Union address. I think this is something that would contribute to bringing Europe closer to the citizens and also bringing ideas from the citizens to the European institutions, because we saw in the Conference on the Future of Europe that citizens have good ideas and sometimes they have ideas that are not mentioned, and the politicians are scared sometimes to mention some issues that the citizens, rightly put on the table. So I think this is something concrete that we could, in which we could, advance the European project.
Yeah, the European movement has been around for over 75 years, as you know, and we have been campaigning and advocating for closer European integration since our foundation in 1948. And often, we get the pushback that this goes too far, citizens are not ready for it. And the Conference on the Future of Europe was a very interesting exercise, exactly because it demonstrated that when asked, citizens are more ambitious than we think. They want to see closer cooperation because they understand perhaps fundamentals at the fundamental level that this is the best way to advance their interests. This has been very, very interesting. And if I may ask one last question, fast forward 5 years from now, we find ourselves either in a room like this or in a restaurant having a little bit of Romanian or Greek wine. What do you think, what would you like to see in those 5 years having happened in that period?
Well, ideally, what I would like to see, it's the process of treaty change happening already. I think we need, after the elections, European elections, to start the process of treaty change. Let's see how will be the composition of the parliament, because this will impact a lot, this exercise. We will have the member countries which are now in the process of joining the European Union closer to the Union. I hope in 5 years. We'll have a defense union, maybe. That would be ideal, because we saw that we need this in the context of the war in Ukraine. And I think, as I said, I think we need to see also the implementation of all this package of legislation that we adopted over the past 5 years, and which I think will transform the economy of the European Union into a better economy, which will be, I think, better prepared for the future.
Well, we look forward to working with you in whichever capacity in the next few years to make sure that all of this becomes a reality. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.